Greetings from Guatemala. So I figured it'd take you guys a little bit of time to go through all the wargaming. So I went on and shot down to Guatemala with my family, and the trek continues. I'm in this side bedroom in this cute little cottage in Antigua, Guatemala, and I'm looking out the window, and there's a massive volcano out there. So, um, and that's the point, right? The point is, and you guys should have seen by now, everything from mindset to the actual opportunities that are out there, that the whole point of this, why we're doing this, why I'm doing this, why I'm using a house that I used a VA loan to buy and I'm now renting it out on Airbnb to pay for this trip, it's to prove that we can use the resources that are available to us and create the lives of our dreams. We just have to be willing to do it and have the support and the network to be able to go get it. So by now, you guys should not only really understand why I'm doing this, but also you should be getting a sneaky suspicion that you could make this a possibility in your own life as well. But your version of it, right? You may not go to Antigua, but you may just take a look around at your life and realize that the liabilities that you thought were dragging you down are what will actually lift you up and rapidly accelerate your path to financial freedom. And as part of that, I'm going to continue convincing you, and there's no better way to convince somebody that something is possible than by showing them people who've done it. So next up is my favorite part, and that is case studies. First up is Rick. Rick, I met at the MEF. He was a Marine getting ready to transition out of the Marine Corps after a long and successful career as a recon Marine. And I asked him what he wanted to do next. And he goes, I don't know, man. A lot of different things. I'm not real sure yet. And I said, well, have you ever considered real estate? And he like, just posture like brightened up. He like got this fire in his eyes and he was like, yeah, man, I've always been interested in real estate. I've always wanted to get into it. But other than using my VA loan to buy a house, I never really, I never really knew what to do or how to get into it. And so we sat there talking. I mean, both of us, when we were on duty, sitting there in the MEF Operations Center, there wasn't typically a whole lot to do at that time, right? So you just stared at a computer screen for 12 hours. And so we would just talk while we were, standing watch. And we started talking about mindset and started talking about like what's possible. And, he kind of really just started spitting out what he wanted to accomplish. And as the more that we talked, the more that he realized that he was surrounded by liabilities. He had purchased everything from old cars to tractors to bobcats to toys to whatever, guns, and he had a ton of this stuff, like most of us do, that you buy over time because you're just interested in that particular thing. But he didn't really use them. And so, even though he wasn't sitting on mountains of cash, he realized that he was sitting on a ton of liabilities that could be converted into cash. And that got him started. And then he learned he could self direct his IRA. And then he learned he could, take out a HELOC on a house and get to it that way. And so he started combining these strategies. And I never forget when I saw in his eyes the light that just lit up. And when he started talking on his own without me sort of prompting him, he started talking on his own about what it could look like. And that turned into what you see now. And this is a dated slide. So if you look over here to the left, this is Rick and his family, right? He's got a beautiful family. And he also has a short-term rental property in Vista that's absolutely crushing it, like mind-boggling. I think his biggest month was like a $30,000 month for a normal house in Vista. He's got other properties all over the United States. He's got long-term rental properties in Memphis. He's got properties he purchased in his IRA that he structured seller finance with. All in all, he was one of the fastest and first members of the original White Feather Gang way back in the day to reach financial freedom. And he did it through a combination of, his VA disability, his retirement, all of the passive income from all the properties that he was making, plus the active income from short-term rentals that he was managing. And he put it all together. And he became financially free. I mean, he got out of the military, went to work for Amazon for a little while, realized he didn't want to do it. And as of this video, has worked for himself since. And he has something that we call Rick time, where it's like if you send him a message and you're like, hey Rick, you want to go skydive? He's like, sure. You're like, hey Rick, you want to go you want to come down? A couple of us are hanging out for lunch or for dinner. Do you want to come down? He's like, sure. Like he literally never says no because he has the time freedom. And that all came from just sitting there at the mock, going over in our heads what the possibilities were, wargaming out what his future could look like and what possibilities existed and what didn't. It started with wargaming. Wargaming can be a discussion between two people. It doesn't have to be this broad, big, elaborate thing. But he took the ideas from those wargaming sessions and he started taking them one step at a time, one step at a time. And then we would iterate and we would change it where it needed to go. And it resulted in him being financially free in a matter of less than 5 years. Awesome. One of my best friends to this day. Awesome dude. Another guy, Taylor. You guys know Taylor Wing, I'm sure by now. He is quite famous in military investor circles. But he came into the White Feather Accelerator with, I think, $20,000. It's kind of a legendary story now. He came into the accelerator with $20,000 from his career starter loan and no real experience in real estate, and just him and his fiance at the time. And Taylor so dramatically executed his plan that he had planned out in war games. He so dramatically and effectively executed it. Everything from seller finance deals, where he got into a deal where the seller financed it and he got $100,000 of free equity, to subject to deals, to BRRRRs. I mean, he did a lot of buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and then repeat type of deals. And he would be able to get those and then get all of his money back out of it and then go put that money back into another one and do it again and again. And, he was able to end up with 5 or 6 properties that he had no money invested in. And then he's the king of VA house hacking. So he's VA house hacked, I think, 3 properties where he bought it, lived in one portion, rented out other portions, lived for free, pocketed his BAH. And then when he moved to another duty station, did a conventional refinance, freed up his VA loan, and then did it again. And then after a while, he started moving on into multifamilies and up to 4 units. And he was able to build not only a huge amount of equity that way, but the guy transitioned out of the Army before he was 30 years old, and he didn't have to get another job. He literally went to work for himself. But I remember talking to him, and young guy, you can see the picture there, right? And I remember talking to him when we first got started in the accelerator, and I was like, so what kind of path do you want to take? And he was like, well, I'm really excited about this, but I was thinking I'd just get started by, buying a rental property, with 20% down conventional financing, and then maybe trying to use my VA loan. I don't know, something like that. That's the conversation. That was it. And that transitioned over time into a much more detailed plan. But the only reason that it did was because he consistently and routinely over and over again wargamed his situation. What if this happens? What if that happens? Am I able to do a BRRRR deal? If I'm able to do a BRRRR deal, then how much, like, what are the calculations? Like, how much can I get back out of it? Well, if I did that BRRRR deal and I'm able to get most of my money back out, well, then I can do maybe 3 or 4 more. And that's way faster than me just saving up money and then putting 20% down. Do you see what I'm saying? All of these things, they're just wargaming. It's just tossing around different options and different opportunities and then deciding which one works best for you and then executing. And as soon as you get into the execution, you realize the things you need to update and need to change. Taylor, another person who's financially free, still young, right? And was able to get there. Phenomenal experience. And here's the cool part. These guys are inside this community. They're guest speakers. They're people who have podcasts that you can listen to. They're people who will hold live calls and you can ask them information. You can ask them questions. They're accessible. These are not gurus that are off on a mountain somewhere. These are our friends. These are part of the community, and that's the community you're part of now. Very, very cool. The Godfather himself to the right, Dave Ortiz. I didn't have anywhere near enough room to put all of the stuff that he's done on here, but I'll just hit a few highlights. Dave, by the way, is an Air Force Academy graduate who, was successful in business, but really was looking for something in his life to create less of a dependency on the stock market, because he had, one weekend back a few years ago where he lost 40% of all of his money in the stock market in a single day. And he was like, goodness gracious, like, I have got to put more stability in my life. I can't have all of my assets tied up into one place, because if something goes wrong there, all of a sudden, all this hard work that I've done over the last multiple decades goes down the drain and I have no control over it. So he decided to branch off into real estate and he went crazy, right? His first deal, I believe, well, he did a couple of like 20% down deals, but then he decided that he wanted to convert his house in Bonita Springs into a short-term rental. So he did some renovations. He put solar on the roof to mitigate the energy costs because they're really expensive in California. And then whenever he's living elsewhere or traveling, he rents it out similar to what I'm doing, and it pays for everything. That was a house that he lived in for years and just never saw it as an asset. But once he shifted his mindset, he said, hey, what if, as part of my war game, I decide to convert my main house into a short-term rental property, and then when I want to live there, go back and live there? And he's executed it flawlessly. One of the coolest things that Dave did was, at one of our meetups, he met another 3 other people from White Feather. One guy from the Navy, one a woman from the Coast Guard, and then a guy from the Army. And they talked to each other for no kidding, probably like 10, 15 minutes, said, you know what, you guys are awesome. We're definitely going to do some work together. And then they parted ways. And less than a month later, Dave called Josie, the Coast Guard um, officer, and he said, hey, Josie, I think this is a good deal. I found this on LoopNet, and it's this 7-unit apartment complex in down at Coronado Island, and it's sandwiched between a Bank of America and a parking garage. So it's zoned commercial, which means that there's not going to be any problem with us renting it on Airbnb. And she was like, yeah, that's great. Let's go get Josh and let's get Keegan and let's get everybody together. They banded together, formed something called Four Branches Equity, raised something like $1.5 million from the White Feather Network and from Fenton Family, and then bought this $3 million 7-unit like a month and a half later. And as of this recording, it's absolutely crushing it. They renovated everything and they're getting huge amounts of average daily rate and making tons of profit for their investors. Right. One of the coolest things that he did, though, was he grew up like me I was born in Galveston, but I grew up, my family's from Houston, and his is also from Houston. He grew up very poor, just like me. And the neighborhood he grew up in was not nice. It was, a lot of hardworking, struggling people, crime, poverty, things like that, right? And so the house he grew up in was actually, they still own, and it was right next to the house that his grandmother lived in. And she passed on, and the house just sat there vacant for a long time. It was this old, dilapidated house. So he actually, learning what he learned in the network and in the accelerator, he hired some contractors. He created this vision to take that lot and turn it into this beautiful duplex that could then provide really nice housing for people in the area. And he's done it. He executed it. So, I mean, it's so crazy, right? So he grew up as a kid on welfare, running around these streets barefoot and just trying to scrape out a living and hoping someday he could provide better for his family. And now he's created this beautiful, best house on the block, beautiful duplex right on the street he grew up on. And it just so happens to be a really good deal. He actually makes great cash flow, good return on investment, and everything. And it's just so cool to see. He's got short-term rentals up in Big Bear. I stayed at he bought a property in Lake Arrowhead, California, turned it into a short-term rental. And then we all went there and stayed for like a weekend and grilled and barbecued. And then he sold it 18 months later for a $400,000 profit. I could go on and on and on. He and I own a 14-unit apartment complex together in Kentucky that's doing great. He was part of the Vistana Villas deal, so he owns 2 of those properties in Lehigh Acres, and on and on and on. I mean, he's a tremendous inspiration. He is somebody that you definitely need to listen to his podcasts or listen to him speak. He's a guest lecturer on the Accelerator as well. But Dave is somebody who, I mean, he thought about it in his mind. We talked about it together. He had some ideas that we didn't think were very good ideas, so he abandoned them. He had some things that didn't work very well, so he moved on. He had other ideas that he was like, hey, what do you think about this? And we're like, I think that's a pretty good idea. Don't know how to do it, but let's figure it out. Right? I like to say everything's figure outable. And so he would pitch these ideas and he would war game them out and he would do the cash flow analysis and try to figure out the pros and cons and everything. But then the key thing was he took that war game and the results of that war game, and then he executed relentlessly. And that's what I'll say to you guys. Any one of you can be like Rick or Taylor or Dave. Any one of you can. It's just about figuring out your path, figuring out wargaming it, testing it to make sure that it'll work, and then executing it. And that's what the next action steps are about. Right? First, watch the tutorial videos. You guys don't let these spreadsheets and these tools intimidate you. If you do, you'll never get off the ground. The tutorial videos break it down Barney style. so that you can understand it. And then you got to get your reps in. You got to get your reps in. Do the work. Identify the top 3 side hustles that really inspire you, the ones that you really know you can sink your teeth into, and then run them through the side hustler. Run them through that tool. It's meant to help you visualize these things and war game out what your possibilities could be like with your top 3 side hustles. Run a bunch of scenarios, the most aggressive scenario, the most conservative scenario, mix and match different things based off of how much time you have and how much energy you want to put into it. Then once you get those numbers, you run those 10 scenarios and you figure out your most aggressive, your most conservative, whatever. Take that number, that beautiful, magical number of how much side income you can create, plug it into the financial freedom blueprint like I showed you, and then run 10 scenarios in the financial freedom blueprint. The reason you're running 10 instead of 2, and I would recommend you run 30, but I, didn't want to scare you. Run a lot of them because that's how you war game and it does it for you. So run a lot of them, stretch your mind out, and then come back home and figure out what the most conservative one is that you know you could do. And then ask yourself if that's the life you want to live. Does that excite you? Does that inflame your passion or not? And if it doesn't, stretch further. I promise you, the life of your dreams is just on the other edge of your comfort zone, which means that it's going to get uncomfortable and it's going to get scary. And if it doesn't, if it's not uncomfortable and not scary, you're not pushing yourself enough, in my opinion. Okay? And remember, no matter what, guys, this is the end of module 5. You guys have come a long way. And again, you're in the top 1% of your peers who are doing this kinds of thing, who are living the kind of life. You're in the top 1% because you're taking the actions necessary to change that into a beautiful life, the American dream that you dream of. So don't forget to celebrate, because at the end of the day, the journey itself is the beauty. And we already have heard dozens and dozens of stories of people who've taken this information and dramatically changed their lives rapidly. And I can promise you that there is nothing more rewarding for me, for Chase or Nate or anybody else that's involved. There's nothing more rewarding for us than the stories like Rick, the stories like Dave, and the stories like you. So I'll see you in module 6.